Good morning, all, and welcome to our 2020 virtual WRJ Pacific District Convention. We're so excited that you are here this morning, and we know some of you might be a little confused by not being able to see each other. Don't worry about that. For those who haven't Zoomed with me before, I'm Shoshana Lewin-Fisher, VP of Marketing and Communications for Pacific District. I'm 1/3 of your convention tech leaders with our website admin and WRJ board member Julia Weinstein and social media chair, recording secretary Lori Glaske. If you can't see or hear each other, it's because this is a webinar, and Julia is going to show you what that looks like, and there's special tools for it. We will have 2 more over the weekend. Our beautiful installation Havdalah tonight and our closing event tomorrow. This format allows you to be able to focus on what is happening on the screen. Should you need anything, please click Q&A on your computer, tablet, or phone and ask a question. We have women standing by to answer them. Just type your question into the Q&A box, send, and you can also send anonymously if you don't want your name attached to the Q&A. Our plenary later today, including our legislative body voting and our Yes Fund brunch tomorrow, are both going to be large meeting style, the one that you are used to. And you'll be on camera, so please bring a smile, although we ask that if you want to eat or move around, that you please turn your camera off. And don't worry if you can't find the link to your next session. Just click on the chat box and you'll find links and information posted, or you can contact us at the convention emails or reply to any of the emails we've sent you up till now. All the links are also in our Yammer Convention group. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our Pacific District President, Dana Adler.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you so much, Shoshana. Welcome to our first and hopefully only virtual WRJ PD convention, One Vision, Many Voices. I saw one of the tributes that said, thank you for being our one COVID president, and I certainly hope that is true for all of us. I'm Dana Adler, WRJ Pacific District President, and it's my pleasure to be here with all of you this weekend. When the planning for convention began a year ago, the world certainly looked different. Everyone has been impacted by COVID, some more seriously than others, but when the WRJ Pacific District was giving lemons, we knew we wanted to open a lemonade stand. Over 75 volunteers have devoted countless hours to transition from an in-person convention to a virtual reality. Convention co-chairs Shari Carruthers and Lillian Burkenheim Silver have steered us wisely, switching gears from an in-person convention to a virtual experience, all with each of our best interests in the forefront. They are true women of valor. If you don't know about Zoom before, how to prepare a virtual presentation, set up a chat room, take a survey, or help facilitate a workshop, I bet you do now. The expertise shared with us by Vice President Marketing Communications Shoshana Lewin-Fisher and her incredible team, including Julia Weinstein and Lori Glaske, has at times made me feel like a dinosaur, but their availability to share their knowledge and skills has been greatly appreciated. I also want to give a special thank you to Rachel Hayden, a member of this amazing team who has been our Highline editor for the past 2 years. Lori and Rachel are moving on and we will miss them tremendously, but we know they're not going far. Thank you for all, and we look forward to continuing to learn more about our virtual world. I wish to acknowledge our WRJ guests for this weekend. WRJ Board Secretary Nicole Villapando and WRJ Board Treasurer Lisa Singer, who have also been on the majority of our steering calls, even when it was midnight their time. At this point, I usually bring greetings from our WRJ Executive Director, Marla Feldman, WRJ President Susan Bass, and WRJ First Vice President Sarah Charney, whom are no strangers to our Pacific District, but instead we will now hear directly from them.
Welcome to this district gathering. My name is Susan Bass, and I am honored to serve as president of Women of Reform Judaism. With this video message, we bring you greetings from your WRJ leadership. Thank you for your participation today and your flexibility in adapting to our new virtual world. While we would, of course, much prefer to be together with you in person, we are nonetheless honored and grateful that you have stuck with us through this challenging time. Your district leaders have devoted much time and talent to bring you an inspiring and enriching program, and we are most appreciative to them for all of their hard work on your behalf. One of the benefits of our new virtual reality is that women from all over North America and even beyond can join you today. Likewise, we hope that you have or will take advantage of the robust list of online programs being offered by WRJ and other WRJ districts. If the technology of your gathering includes a chat feature, I hope you will take this opportunity while you're listening to us to introduce yourselves to your WRJ sisters. Post a message about who and where you are and offer words of welcome to others. While we all may be participating virtually from our own homes, we can still create a sense of community with one another. This is the powerful network of caring women that is WRJ. The last several months have been challenging for many of us. Some have faced hurricanes, wildfires, and blistering heat waves. All of us have felt the economic and social impact of this global pandemic. Our hearts and prayers go out to all those who have been touched personally by the COVID-19 virus, those who have lost loved ones or who coped with debilitating illness, those who have suffered loss of employment or other economic challenges, those who are struggling to meet the needs of children who are home from school or elderly relatives who are isolated in senior care facilities. Please know that we are here for you. Now, I turn the program over to our Executive Director, Rabbi Marla Feldman.
Throughout the crisis, WRJ has been there for you. We are blessed to have a dedicated staff who transitioned to working remotely to continue offering the excellent service that you expect from us. Our affiliate services team has continued to connect with and support our members throughout this crisis. We are particularly grateful to Joanne Freed for establishing WRJ's new engagement initiative, through which we are able to reduce membership dues for the next 3 years. We hope this subsidy will be helpful during this particularly challenging time. Thousands of women have participated in our webinars and virtual programs, coordinated by our hardworking program team. Our conference planning team quickly pivoted last spring to provide an amazing virtual Freed Women's Conference, and they are already planning the next conference. And throughout this crisis, our advocacy team has not wavered from its critical work. We continue to address the gender pay gap, which has been exacerbated due to the disparate impact of economic downsizing on women. And our reproductive health and rights campaign continues full force, opposing state-by-state efforts to strip women of their hard-won rights. And finally, our philanthropy team has been hard at work raising funds to provide Yes Fund grants and other philanthropic support to advance the mission of Reform Judaism. Despite the pandemic, WRJ provided hundreds of thousands of dollars to our grantees in the past year, and we will be doing the same again in the coming year. We could not do any of this without all of you, our members, our supporters, our sisters. And so now I'll turn it over to WRJ First Vice President, Sarah Charney.
Some of us joining today are bedecked and bejeweled with a variety of pins, including Lifeline pins, signifying donations to the WRJ Yes Fund Lifeline Endowment. Congratulations to those who recently completed their lifelines and may be wearing their pins for the first time. Others are sporting Ner Tamid pins. Ner Tamid Society members are legacy donors who have included WRJ in their planned giving. We could not accomplish our work without your support and dedication. Each of you participating in this virtual gathering is a leader. You are leaders of your sisterhoods, your congregations, your communities, and WRJ. The entire reform movement is blessed to have such inspirational, intelligent, thoughtful, and strong leaders devoted to making Reform Judaism flourish and thrive. We wish to particularly acknowledge the many WRJ North American board members who are joining us today. And WRJ is blessed to have a cadre of district board leaders who facilitate the tremendous work of our 8 districts. With sincere gratitude, we thank your district president, who has led the district for the past 2 years. We know she will continue to provide wisdom and support to those who follow her in leadership. And we are eager to work with your incoming president, who we know will bring renewed energy and vigor to the tasks that lie ahead. And so, as we begin our sacred time together, I would like to offer these words from the WRJ publication, Covenant of the Soul, written by Diane Portnoff of Temple Isaiah in Lafayette, California. We gather today as women of faith. We gather today as women of vision, women of commitment, women of action, women who live the covenant made with God at Sinai. We gather as leaders of sisterhood dedicated to Tikkun Olam and devoted to the highest ideals of our religion. We gather as women of Reform Judaism. We pray that our deliberations reflect the values we cherish and that our decisions mirror our aspirations for our sisterhoods. May our gatherings strengthen and inspire each of us individually and in community, so that we, in turn, can strengthen and inspire the women who look to us to lead them. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be God's will.
Good morning, Boker Tov. Welcome to our first virtual convention. I'm Shari Kritchmar, your first vice president. This morning, I am going to introduce you to our special speaker. Imagine you're 27 years old, beginning your professional career, and recently married when you receive the news we all fear. You have breast cancer. That was what Natalie Grumet heard 13 years ago. Despite the intensive chemotherapy and numerous surgeries, Natalie beat all the odds. And after recovery and finally remission, she dedicated herself to patient care and rebuilding her life. To celebrate her 10 years of remission, she and her husband, Jason, looked forward to celebrating this milestone. So on October 1st, 2017, they attended the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival on the Las Vegas Strip, where a lone gunman opened fire on the crowd, killing 59 and wounding over 500, one being Natalie. You are now going to hear directly from Natalie, a warrior, truly, on how her life has been impacted. Her determination, dedication, and tenacity has enabled her to survive all odds, and how she is using her life's experience to deliver a very powerful message. Trigger alert. Please be aware there are some of Natalie's photos which are very graphic and disturbing. I'm proud to welcome my friend Natalie Grumet, whose parents are also a part of my Temple Beth Or family. Welcome, Natalie.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. And, it's an honor to be here with your 2020 conference. And I have to say thank you to Cher for such a warm welcome. I know today is a really big day for you. So Mazel Tov, and thank you for including me in it and recommending for me to be a part of your morning. Also, have to thank Dana Adler for all of the encouragement she's been giving me as well. And Dion, my contact person over the last several months, always keeping me in the loop. And a special thanks to the tech team ladies who have made sure I was ready to go in all things tech. So definitely wouldn't be able to put this together with all you ladies helping me. So thank you so much for that. Just a testament of our sisterhood and the women of Judaism and the force behind it when we all get together. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the participants that are joining this morning and inviting me in to share some very personal and intimate things about my life and my story. So thank you for making time to listen and be a part of that this morning. I definitely get through life with humor. So if it sounds like I'm making fun of myself or laughing, please feel free to join me through your Zooms. And, thank you for being here. So I'm going to make sure this is working. So as Cher mentioned, I grew up at Temple Beth Or La Mirada and definitely have a lot of my precious childhood memories, and can really now look back and see how important those Jewish roots were for me. And they really grounded me for a lot of the things that were going to come in my life, the difficulties and challenges that were ahead. I think a lot of it, I think back to October 2007. And I remember sitting in an oncologist's office and, he was talking and he was saying things like, fast growth rate, high recurrence rate, lower survival rates. And I remember just wanting him to stop talking, as if not saying it would make it less true. I had been misdiagnosed for over 6 months. I had been told by doctors that I was fine, nothing was wrong. And it was after an MRI showed a 2-centimeter mass that doctors stopped telling me I was okay. And I had just turned 27. It was 3 weeks after my 27th birthday when I received the news that I did, in fact, have breast cancer. And the month of September was really just dedicated to, CT scans and PET scans and additional MRIs and bone scans. And I just remember kind of being in shock and wondering how I was going to get through this whole next journey of what was to come. October, I had my port placed in my chest, and I had my lymph nodes removed from underneath my arm. I started chemotherapy. And so the month of October just kind of became this huge month of treatment and all the first steps. And I'd always, come to look back as October as this month of fighting and kind of gearing up for the battle. And by the end of October, I was completely bald. Now, I have to tell you that October 2007 was a particularly difficult time to be bald. Now, I'm not sure if you all remember, Britney Spears had her famous paparazzi meltdown and decided to shave her head that year, towards the end of the year in 2007. And there was pictures everywhere of it. And you wouldn't even believe how many people came up to me on Halloween that year. I was like just fresh into my first treatment, bald, and people came up to me and wanted to know if I was dressing up as Britney Spears for Halloween, and that's why I'd shaved my head. So I will definitely always remember kind of learning to laugh in those moments and be like, no, I did not shave my head to be Britney Spears. In fact, I have cancer, but that sounds much more fun to be Britney Spears at the moment. So, at the same time, I had to really deal with this idea of this time clock kind of ticking away on top of me. And especially in the beginning, I remember thinking, would I reach my 30th birthday? Would my parents be given the horrible task of burying their only child? And would I have, would I be able to start a family with my husband? And these thoughts really consumed me in the beginning, and it was hard to move past them. And, shortly after I was diagnosed, I needed to drive into UCLA, and my mom was able to take me that day. So we were in her car, and she's a complete germaphobe. And we pull into the gas station, and we go to, I go to start pumping the gas, and, I'm touching the buttons for, to pay. And she just starts, freaking out. And she's like, oh my gosh, stop touching all of the things. And, here's this, and use a paper towel. And I'm super flustered at this point. And finally, I'm like, Mom, I have cancer. What am I going to get at this gas station that's worse than that right now? And, we kind of just laughed, and then it became this family joke. And, I started realizing the importance of finding humor where you can, not to take away from the seriousness of what you're going through in any means. But I truly believe that laughter is the best medicine at times. And if you can't take a step back from those hard moments, it's so easy to just let them consume you. And so I remember that probably a little bit after that, I needed to get some new shoes. And for most, women, us ladies, the idea of new shoes is, a great day of shopping. And I just remember pulling up into the shoe store and thinking, I'm just going to grab the first pair I see. Who cares if they're comfortable? Like, I just want to get a cheap pair. And that underlining thought was because, who knows if I'm going to even be there to wear them after the season. And I really had to stop myself right there, because I realized that, yes, it's shoes and it seems kind of like silly and petty, but the idea behind it, where my mindset was going, was so much bigger than the shoes. It was about recognizing that life is not meant to be lived going through the basic motions. Do you want to live your life picking the easiest option, the cheapest option, the safest option? I I know that when you have nothing, sometimes it's thriving in hope that gets you through it, because you're promised nothing, and you have to find that hope, and you have to cling to it, and it becomes your light. And that was like a very grounding moment for me. The importance of shifting my mindset and, letting yourself feel those things, but not letting yourself get stuck in those moments. And that year my life would be filled of so much. I went through 6 rounds of grueling chemotherapy. I had mild congestive heart failure and had a lot of complications with my chemotherapy and my white blood counts. And I also had a lot of growing pains with my more immediate relationships and family, and watching them watch me go through these things and how they were going through it. So, I remember my husband, we had only been married for about 4 years, and he had this young, healthy wife who, in an instant had cancer and wasn't healthy and was now very sick. And he really struggled to open up, and it was very difficult on our marriage at times. And I remember just kind of always trying to get him to kind of open up more. And finally he came to me one day and he was like, okay, I'm ready to talk. And I'm thinking, oh, thank goodness, this is going to be like our big open moment. And, he was very serious, and he was like, I want to talk to you about something, but I don't want you to get upset and mad. And I know all of you married ladies on here know that moment where you're like, okay, don't make any sudden facial expressions, like keep a straight face, whatever he's about to say. And he said, when I'm not home, are you letting the dogs on the sofa? Because I've been finding a lot more dog hair on the sofas lately. Now, as you can imagine, I was going through chemical menopause, so it took all of my self-control not to put him in an immediate chokehold. But it also made me take a step back and, realize that you have to give space to those that are going through something significant with you, and that they go through it in their own space and time. And it's different than you. And, you know, it's also, I think, what led me to my next big connection, because you couldn't just rely on those immediate people. Sometimes you had to open up your community. And in this case, I think you're probably all thinking of each other, right? The sisterhood and the community that we find within um, our temples, and as Jewish women, our sisterhood. Um, and for me specifically in that moment, I had to look deeper as well. And one of the things that really helped me get through each of those moments is finding my sisterhood of women. And as each month passed, I gained more strength, and I had to make a conscious decision to stop living my life in fear. This was my life. I had to live it, whatever time I had left. I didn't want to waste on circumstances that were beyond my control. And, you know, um, October became the significant month for me because I was fighting for my life, and each chemo infusion was helping me. And at the same time, I started meeting other women who are going through it. And they really became this lifeline to me. And, they were like oxygen. I couldn't breathe, and they became this beacon of hope. And I remember thinking, I want to get well so I can pass on that torch of hope to somebody else, because I realized the significance of what they were doing for me. When I felt lost, and I'd see these women that had gone through the similar treatments and the surgeries, and they were out there living their life, and they were well, and they were telling people about it. And it inspired me to be courageous and have strength to someday be that for someone else. And, they really were a lifeline. And, as the months and the years went on, I still had countless moments of anxiety that the cancer had returned. And, the first oncologist I had met with gave me this horribly poor prognosis. So, I had that in the back of my mind. But despite that oncologist's poor prognosis, I remained in remission, and, the years began to pass, and I distanced myself more and more. Never failing to still make the connections and reach out to newly diagnosed women, and recognizing, the milestones of myself, but also helping others reach their own. And as I hit my 5 year, and then my oncologist started graduating me to annual visits, and then the unthinkable happened. I was back in ultrasound school, and I've actually never shared this story talking about it. I've written about it a few times. It's very personal, but I thought, of all the women that I would ever be so open to share this with, especially the first time, it would be my fellow women of Judaism. And, I know all of you out there are, an extension of my grandma, my aunts, my moms, my sisters. And so I decided to share this part because it's probably when I was most challenged to maintain hope. And I just started my ultrasound program, and found out I was actually pregnant. And it was this miracle, because doctors had told me they didn't think I'd be able to get pregnant after everything I'd gone through treatment and surgery wise. And it felt like this miracle had been bestowed upon me. And I remember my ultrasound program director going over the risk of miscarriage. And I thought, there's no way that's going to happen to me. Not because I was cocky or I thought I was better than anybody else that had happened to. I felt like that I had like achieved some scorecard in life, right? Like that I had gone through all of these horrible things with cancer, and that, being diagnosed at such a young age, the unfairness of it and all the complications that ensued during it. And that here God was now giving me this beautiful gift of life, like tap on the shoulders, like, good job, you made it. Here's this for you now. And I felt beyond blessed. I really did. And it was, you just can't find the words when you get that news and hearing the baby's heartbeat for the first time. And unfortunately, about a month later, we lost the baby. And I think back because I felt the unfairness and the sting of it, right? Like I thought that I had put my time in of doing hard things. And that's when I really needed to cling to my hope and strength even more. And it was the hardest. And I had to go back to all those moments that cancer had taught me about hard times, about believing in myself, about moving forward. And I had to relive those strengths to keep myself whole. And I realized as I did that those coping mechanisms actually made me stronger. I had a horrible time when I lost the baby emotionally and physically. I was on, had to be hospitalized and be on IV antibiotics for 2 days. And then I had some complications. I needed additional surgery. And through it all, I think there was a part of me that wanted to say, like, why me? Like, why is this happening? I thought that this was my time. And, and I had to grieve for my loss and my baby. And I also had to make a decision. Was I going to live in this grief? Was I going to live as a victim and bitter? I didn't want to. And it was almost like God, was saying, okay, you're thinking these things, but are you going to live these emotions? Are you going to really truly be a testament of faith and strength when I've given you all reasons to give up? And I decided that I would. And it, wasn't always easy. I definitely had my days where I just stayed in bed, but I didn't let those days become weeks and I didn't let them define me. And I got the help that I needed to heal and get well. And that was work. And I think that anytime you, invest in yourself to get well, it's one of the best investments you can make because you have to be this whole person to be able to give back and be a part of society and your family and the things that matter to you. Now, as I approached my 10-year remission mark, I was again reminded how precious life was in the most unfathomable way. It was October 1st. I was in Las Vegas, Nevada, attending a 3-day country music festival with family and friends. I was there with my husband. And, completely unaware of the evil being constructed right behind me at the Mandalay Bay. And you can, see it in this picture directly behind us. And I look back and it just haunts me to see this image, knowing what was about to occur, because on October 1st, by the end of the night, it would become the largest shooting massacre in the history of the United States. 58 people were killed, over 500 were injured. I remember as the first few shots rang out, there was this confusion that settled over the crowd of 22,000 people. And, suddenly I felt what was like a large explosion hit my face and this searing pain, and my face was on fire. And it was like the world just stopped for several seconds. And like I couldn't really hear or make out what was in front of me. And then it was like everything came into focus. And I heard the sound of automatic gunfire. And I realized that I had been shot in the face. And in addition to that, that we were now under direct gunfire. And all I could hear were those bullets whizzing around me. And I knew that I had sustained a significant gunshot to my face. A stranger behind me took her shirt off and told me to put it to my face, that I was, hit in the face and that I was going to be bleeding a lot, but that I was going to be okay. This chaos continued around us, and I could still hear people crying and screaming. And during this brief reprieve of gunfire, I decided that we should get up and try to run. For the first time when I got up to run, I saw the full carnage around me, and I knew that I did not have the luxury of falling apart. And it was like in those moments, everything that I had been through came flashing back to me. And I thought, I did not survive 10 years of remission to die here tonight. I did not survive everything that I've gone through to die here tonight if there's anything that I can do about it. And I knew that my husband, he was up in our hotel room. I knew I did not have the luxury of falling apart until I got to him. And I thought about all those times that I thought I wasn't going to make it in the last 10 years, when I had doctors telling me that the odds weren't in my favor, when I had the most unthinkable things taken from me and the lowest I had been, and how in each of those times I had found that light. Like I had found that inner strength. I had not given up hope to make it through. And I knew that that night that I was experiencing shot in the face, being shot at, could not be any different. And I clung to those moments I had made it through, those past victories, and knew that I had to gather my own hope and strength to make it out of there. There's no previous life experiences that prepare you for being in an open field under gunfire with people so violently killed around you. I passed an immense amount of tragedy on the field that night, and it really almost killed me to keep running by those people. And I kept thinking, that's somebody's somebody, that's somebody's spouse, that's somebody's child. And I think that was probably one of the hardest moments of that night. And at one point we hopped a fence and started to take cover in between shots. I borrowed a stranger's phone and asked them if I could text my husband. And the next thing we know, the next round of gunfire started happening. And I looked over and this stranger slumped beside me. And I knew that we really needed to get out of there. And, we were so packed in there that people were just pouring out however they could. This is a picture of a iron wrought fence that people had literally broken down, thousands of people trying to exit this venue. And we spilled onto a side street that backed up to the employee entrance of the Tropicana. And at this point, we had been under gunfire for 10 minutes. And, thousands of people just poured into the street, and the gravity of the situation just became more intense as I looked for help. I knew that I was not doing well and that I needed to get to a hospital. So I went up the steps of the Tropicana, and I, followed the crowds into this back entrance of the hotel. Obviously didn't know what I looked like, but as people saw me, they stepped aside. And I think that, seeing the fear registering in their face by looking at me made my heart really skip a beat. And I was taken to this back room that they were doing triage in. And there was a orthopedic surgeon, his wife, who's a surgical nurse, an off-duty EMT, and a probation officer. and they had all been at the concert and then had all gone to the Tropicana to, seek refuge and safety. And now they were helping triage people. And I always say, God kind of put this A team together for me in those moments because, an orthopedic surgeon, a surgical nurse, an EMT, and they stabilized me and they saved my life in that, basement area of the Tropicana that night until the ambulance can get there and take me to the hotel. And I remember asking somebody to call my husband, and they're like, well, we don't know his number. And I was like, well, I do, and I had a really hard time talking, but I was able to get his phone number out, and they called him and he told me, I will get to you, I will find you. And they told him that they were taking me to Sunrise Hospital in Las Vegas, and they loaded us in the ambulance. There was 3 of us that had been shot. They loaded us in to get us in there, and this guy that had been shot in the leg sat behind me and asked if he could help. And they said, can you hold pressure on her face? And he talked to me the whole way. I could hear the lights and everything going on around me. And he was just like, you're going to be okay, Natalie. We're almost there. We're getting closer. I can hear the hospital. We're slowing down. We're almost there. And, okay, we parked. We're getting out. And, they took me out and they brought me to the trauma bay. And unfortunately, Sunrise Hospital received the bulk of the victims that night. So there was over 199 gunshot victims that were brought into the hospital that night alone. And just complete and utter chaos of people needing to be treated. And one of the last memories I have before losing consciousness is them telling me that I needed to be intubated, that my airway was starting to close. And so they needed to intubate me. I came through about 30 minutes later, and I started to kind of wake up from, to a more conscious state. And, everything kind of came back to me why I was there, what had happened to me. I'd been shot. I'd gone to the hospital. So I was like, okay, I know where I'm at. And then I went to move. I felt like I couldn't get a deep breath. And I was like, oh, that's the intubation system. And I heard it beeping. And I'm like, something's wrong with it. I don't think I'm breathing right. I better tell somebody that this intubation system isn't working. And I went to move, and I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't, from my fingers to my toes, I couldn't make anything move. And that's when I think this new fear set in. I didn't know if I'd been injured worse than I remembered, if something else had happened to me, if I had been shot somewhere else and not realized it at the time. All these thoughts flooding through me. I didn't know if I was in a coma, and I started thinking, what if I'm in here and my family thinks I'm in a coma on life support, and they don't know, like, I'm still mentally all here. I can hear things going on around me. I can feel things. I just can't communicate. I'm intubated and I can't, talk, and now I can't make any movement. And I will be honest, I had the biggest panic attack, and I could feel the more this happening, the less I was able to breathe. It was like this panic just, going through me, and the beeping of the machine and not being able to let somebody know I needed help. Okay, now I'm not sure if there's any Grey's Anatomy fans in here today. I hope in the group there are. And if there's not, I'm just going to give you a super brief background that Grey's Anatomy is a series starring Meredith Grey, who starts as a resident in a hospital as a new doctor, and she falls in love on day one with Derek Shepherd, who's nicknamed McDreamy, and they have this long on and off, up and down affair of love, and finally they're married and they have a couple kids, and Derek goes on to go on a trip, and unfortunately he's in a horrible car accident, and he's not at his hospital, so he has other doctors working on him, and he doesn't make it, and the world goes crazy of Grey's Anatomy fans that Derek Shepherd is killed. Now, I was a really avid watcher of this show, and all of a sudden, here I am in this hospital and I'm thinking of this series. And I know it's crazy, but if you remember, I use humor to get through things. And so I remembered this meme that had gone out, this Grey's Anatomy joke that the real reason Derek didn't, he didn't die from the car accident. He died because he wasn't intubated right, that they intubated him 5 centimeters at the lip instead of centrally. And it was like this meme that came to my head, and it made me think, that I'm not in Grey's Anatomy. I'm in real life. And yes, I'm living a very crazy life, but I'm not on a TV show, and I'm going to be just fine. And, I think it was something I needed to kind of like snap me back to focus and make me kind of laugh and be like, okay, you're intubated. It is working okay. You need to relax and take a deep breath. And that's why I always say, there is no right or wrong way of what gets you through situations. And for some people, it's bad humor. And for some people, it's baking, and whatever it is, if it's reading, walks on the beach, you cling to those things that keep you sane. So my husband told me later that he found me in the hospital. They couldn't locate me in the chaos. He said a bed rolled by him of somebody that had their clothes cut off them in parts. They didn't have any shoes on, that they were soaked in blood, and they were intubated, and it looked like a grenade had exploded from the inside of their mouth out. And as the bed turned the corner, he recognized a braid I had done in my hair that night. And so that's when he found me. And my family and him were given the news that I was shot in the lower left side of my face. My jaw had been completely shattered. My chin had fractured in half. The 2 nerves that run alongside our face, one controls movement and one controls sensation. They had both been destroyed on impact, and that I had been partially paralyzed because of this. I had lost 1/3 of my blood supply, so I needed an emergency blood transfusion. And I was no longer able to take anything by mouth, food or fluids, so they would need to put a G tube to be able to give me nutrition. So one of Jason's immediate thoughts when he found me was he wanted to get me home to California, to the hospital that I work at. And this internal instinct, really just grew into this plan propelled by family and friends and strangers to make possible. And 4 days later, an air ambulance took me to Mission Hospital and took me home. I would undergo second surgery within 24 hours of being at Mission Hospital, where they needed to further clean out my wound. And then they also put 3 titanium plates in to hold the left side of my face together, where my jawbone had been completely shattered. And then they also made sure that I was wired shut so that my chin and jaw could be stabilized while it healed. As I started to come out of the medical sedation and drugs at this point, like I just refused to let anybody leave my side. I wanted family and friends there. I was terrified to be alone. Even when I was under sedation, my heart rate would be so high. It was very hard to control my anxiety. And they had a hard time closing my facial wound. So they needed an additional surgery where they took skin from the back of my neck and flapped it over. I had just lost so much skin tissue and muscle that they couldn't close it the first 2 surgeries. So they needed a 3rd surgery to close it. And luckily they could. On the 17th day of being in ICU, they removed my tracheotomy tube, which I was super grateful for. My jaw was still wired shut, but at least the trach tube had been removed, and I could say my first words, which was thank you to the medical staff surrounding me. I think even with all of the emotions going on, just the gratitude of all these people stepping in to save my life was so strong. And we could start planning my discharge date. I'd been in ICU for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, the next day I had a complication of bleeding come up. I started to bleed internally into my neck, and I was rushed off for an emergency 4th surgery. And I just realized, I could be in this hospital in this safe place and still everything could go wrong. And, I just had to have faith that once again, I would get through this and cling to my hope even more. But with these tears and determination, there also came this strong sense of wanting to go home and get out of this hospital room. And, I was lucky because a couple days later, I was discharged, and it happened to be Shabbat. So I came home. I had left in September, carefree, healthy, returned to my home towards the end of October, with a feeding tube. My jaw was wired shut, and I just felt like this completely different person. And I was so lucky to have my family just gather around me, and they put together this beautiful Shabbat, as you can see in the picture. And because I couldn't drink, I was using a syringe to take fluids on the right side of my mouth. You can see kind of in the far right corner of the picture, my husband even took my syringe tube and he put some Manischewitz so I could have some Kiddush wine to go with our prayers. And it was, a very grounding, sobering, beautiful moment for our family. And I'm very grateful for it. As the days progressed, I found even being at home, the slightest sound made me jump. Like I didn't trust anybody I didn't know. I was scared to be left alone. I felt very disconnected. And I knew that I had this long road ahead of me, that it wasn't going to be easy. And I think all of the things that I'd gone through, I pulled from even more to find the strength. My surgeons explained I had a long 2 years ahead of me to rebuild my face. It was going to take multiple surgeries, and I refused to give up hope. I just committed to doing everything in my power to rebuild my life. It's been over 3 years since the shooting. I've had 13 surgeries, 4 different hospital stays, and I'll likely have a 14th surgery next month. My jaw's been wired shut twice, 8 weeks the first time and 6 weeks the second time. I think the longest, most grueling surgery I had was in March. It was a 7-hour surgery where they basically rebuilt my jawbone. They took bone marrow from my hip, and they put a titanium mesh plate on my left side so they can remove the 3 bars that had been there. And they did a nerve graft from my leg into my face to reconnect the nerves. And in July, I had a second nerve graft surgery. The success rates vary. And I remember the doctors telling me they could take years. And, I think that I've been painstakingly put together by all of these talented, dedicated physicians who describe this process as stretching the limits of biology. And, I just made this commitment that if they were willing to do this for me and be there, then I was willing to show up as a patient. And I dealt with a lot of the physical components of my recovery, but the emotional struggles have been very challenging. And I really wish I could stand up here and say, like, I never questioned where God was in this, or asked countless questions to all the rabbis that came to visit me to try to make sense of this tragedy, to witness so much violence and destruction. It changed me. And having faith and believing is easy when everything is going right. It's when everything's going wrong that your faith is truly challenged. And my survivor's guilt was paralyzing. I felt like my heart and faith had been shattered. And, people come up to me and say I was this miracle. And I think, what about the other 58 people there that night? Where was their miracle? And my heart would just drop in, trying to make sense of this. But I've come to realize, that night is so much bigger than me. It's, those other 22,000 people there and all those countless heroes along the way that we met that night. One person showed evil, and since then, hundreds of thousands have shown love and kindness. And I always say that where tragedy struck, kindness erupted, because from the moment I was shot, countless strangers showed up to help me. And I've come to appreciate that our lives are built on adversity, and that each one of us is made up of the challenges and obstacles we've faced. We each have our own story, what, God has unfairly handed us, and how we've chosen to react. Having cancer 13 years ago gave me the coping skills to tackle anything, to face fear head on. and realize the immense power one has in adjusting their mindset. We're not given promises it's going to be easy or without challenge. And I can say through my own personal experiences that I found even more reason to find joy where there was loss, love where there was hate, and understanding where there was judgment. It has strengthened me as a person, strengthened my faith, and helped me hold fast to my hope and realize that this is my life and this is my story. So thank you all so much for being here and for listening this morning. I am going to be on later with my husband, Jason. I know that there's a chat available, so I'm looking forward to meeting more of you then in a more intimate one-on-one setting. And we welcome your questions and sharing with you later this evening. Thank you so much all for having me. And I can't wait to enjoy the rest of the day with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Natalie. It's hard for words to be able to express how amazing and impactful your words were. We're saving the chat and we'll send it to you so that you can see all the lovely messages that were written because you touched so many people to their core. And we really appreciate your sharing your story and demonstrating your strength and being a role model for all women, being a warrior in the face of such incredible odds. We are looking forward to being able to talk to you and your husband this evening in the chat room.
And thank each and every one of you for joining us today. We are blessed by your attendance and your donation and continued support of WRJ and Pacific District. Even though you could attend convention for free, over 95% of you donated to the district to support the Yes Fund, the district, and URJ camps. Throughout this weekend, you will also see the people and the sisterhoods who have stepped up and honored individuals and the district with their tributes and their sponsorships.
We had planned this convention to be interactive. So grab your emoji, your hands, your wave, be ready to be engaged, whether it's in a chat room, on reactions or what have you. And we look forward to seeing you more throughout the weekend. Now's the time for you to stretch, take a short break, and then join one of the Torah studies that explores finding your voice and women's role in the Torah. You will find links to those sessions both in the chat room and on the convention links that were sent to you. Enjoy, and we'll see you after lunch in the plenary session.